Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Brian Berneman, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I have the privilege to be joined all the way from the South Island here in New Zealand by Bridget Williams. Thank you so much, Bridget, for taking the time to be here. And what I know that it's going to be a great conversation based on everything that we have already talked about. So for everyone that is listening and watching us, can you share a little about you? Who is Bridget?
I was Bridget. Well, first of all, kia ora, and thank you so much, Brian, for this opportunity. I love the opportunity to have this space, because it actually gets me to consciously reflect and see the journey that I have been on. And we talked about this yesterday, right? That sometimes when you look back on the journey, it looks so linear and like it goes, one thing after the other, but it hasn't been like that. It sounds like that in hindsight. But yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit about who I am and what I do. So my name is Bridget Williams. I'm from Otatahi, Christchurch. I'm like a sixth generation Cantabrian. I've lived here all my life, and being a part of Christchurch, obviously I was really involved with the earthquakes that happened, and that has hugely shaped my journey. It happened around the time when I was just starting university, the Canterbury University, which was another place that definitely shaped who I am today. And I'm someone who has a deep connection to creativity, although I always tried to put it in a box when I was growing up. I didn't have the best connection with it when I was younger. I'm someone that really believes in the power of leadership, meaning from leading from the inside out, that we're all leaders, and also and especially sustainability. So that is having a real connection to Papatua Nuku, nature, and all areas of sustainability. So that's economic, social, and environmental. And I'm particularly interested and passionate in a framework called the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which has something to do with the beads that I'm wearing.
Beautiful. And, Bridget, I would love for you to share a little bit more that you have already shared with me about your path of, what you're doing now. But as you're saying, that you just shared about that creativity space that you put in a box, what did you do? What led you to do this? As you were sharing, like that university shaped you. Like, what was that pathway?
What was the pathway? Yeah. And I mean, I can go right back to the start really, really, really quickly, which is just to say that looking back, obviously I had an incredibly privileged and amazing childhood. My mum and dad gave me and my two sisters access to nature. We were a family that skied together and went tramping all the time when we were younger. I am a twin. I have an identical twin sister. And I think that really shaped me around not being competitive, but Hannah and I have always sort of had to like one up each other in a healthy way to get people's attention. And I think that has been really that has helped me when it comes to the work that I do now, which is facilitating and speaking. Like, it doesn't scare me because I've sort of always had this other person that I've kind of had to push out of the way. But it's never been competitive for Hannah and I. She's my best friend, and I'm so proud of her and everything that she's done. But yeah, so I sort of mentioned before around how me and creativity never had a very good relationship. So when I was growing up, I was always sort of described as the creative one. I was more right side of the brain than left side. And as I got older and through school, it started to sound like a backhanded compliment. You know, it was, oh, Bridget's not intellectual. She's more creative. And, you know, I was always that kid that was in the special needs class growing up. I, you know, had like after school, I would have to go to more classes to, you know, school up in my reading and writing. I had a really, really low reading age and a really low spelling age. And even when I was really young, I had a really bad speech impediment as well. So that hasn't helped with my spelling because I could never hear the words correctly. So all of that sort of made me feel like I just wasn't smart, which is crazy because creatives are incredibly smart, but because it's hard to quantify and value and put a number on it, society doesn't seem to value it. So I put it in a box, and I grew up wanting to be a lawyer because for me, that was always something that I saw as being a really aspirational career. You know, smart people were lawyers, you know, like they thought outside the box and they were real intellects. So I probably did law for all the wrong reasons. It came from a place of ego, not from a place of what my spirit really wanted to do. And it didn't help either that my dad tried to be a lawyer. So he got a law degree, but he didn't find a law position. So when I was at uni, I worked really hard to get the grades, and I ended up achieving getting the grades that I really wanted, and I got a summer clerkship, which got me a grad position, and then I became a full-time lawyer, and I was a solicitor for about 3 years. And after a particularly bad day in court, and just feeling like I just wanted to put all my frustration and this negative energy into something positive, because I just wasn't feeling like I was adding any value to the firm or to the clients, to the world or to myself, I decided to put this frustration into something constructive, and I made a necklace. Very similar to this one here, with 5 big bright beads. And as I was painting and creating, I realized the magic of just making space for raw, messy creativity. I was thinking up of, other ideas and cool creative solutions and philosophies. And I thought, man, if we could all make time for this, it's like, what could we achieve? And so I sort of developed this concept of bringing people together to paint beads in sort of in a workshop setting. And I thought, well, it could be called Bead and Proceed, because it's about painting beads, proceeding to be something, better for you and for your community. And then I thought, well, that's all great, but what do the beads mean? Like, what story do they tell? They're such a visual thing. And it didn't have to be a necklace. It could be, a key ring as well. And then honestly, like the next day, I was flipping through the Peppermint magazine, and I came across the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, aka the SDGs. And the colors just drew my attention, and I saw that each color connected to a different goal. So like dark green was climate action, bright pink was reduce inequalities. And I thought, my goodness, New Zealand, Aotearoa, adopted this framework along with 192 other UN member states. And this is the first I'm hearing of it, which was back in 2016. And then it was like a light bulb moment where I thought, that's it. What if we come together to paint these 5 beads? And these 5 beads represent the 5 SDGs that we personally feel called to action. So coming together to paint wasn't just a creativity exercise, but actually a time to brainstorm and ideate and come up with creative solutions to action the 5 goals we care about. And all of that, and the model of Bead and Proceed, that was sort of how Bead and Proceed was born. There's been moments in my past that sort of led me there. So while I was at uni, I was really involved in the Student Volunteer Army, which inspired me about service leadership and active citizenship. I also learned a lot about the social enterprise model. So it was really natural for Bead and Proceed to, make sure that we had, it was a social enterprise model, that we walk the SDG talk, not just, discuss the goals, but we actually action them as well. And then I made the really hard decision, which is a whole nother story, to leave the law, but I did, and I've been doing Bead and Proceed now full-time since 2019, and worked with about 50 plus businesses and organizations and nearly 14,000 individuals, educating and engaging people on the SDGs they personally feel connected to.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yesterday when we were talking, and I was like, oh, wow, there's this whole other story about creativity, about following one path, about understanding how to actually connect things that perhaps seem to be completely separate, like doing like creativity work, just painting beads, making perhaps necklaces, with connecting them to all of these SDGs and to be able to understand and to educate. And then suddenly it's like all of these different things that come together. So thank you for sharing that. And one of the interesting things that I feel a lot of times is because I came across the SDGs many years ago. I was a volunteer. I don't even remember when now. It's been a long time. I think that perhaps like 16 years ago or something like that, on an organization, a youth organization that it's called ISEC, that it's worldwide. And one of the tools that we were working with was the SDGs. And I really connected with all of them because it's such an easy framework as well, to know and to have that. Unfortunately, not many people know about. And it's one of the things that, I love this framework. I love as well the donut economic framework, a lot of the frameworks as well that start to see things holistically. And it's, as well on the level of, how do I connect with them? And I love this, and about you have now, for everybody that is just listening, you have a necklace with 5 beads with different colors. Is that the ones that you resonate the most with?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and you're so right. You just hit some really important points about the SDGs, which is that like interconnectedness. And there are so many frameworks out there that exist on sustainability. And I guess and all of them have pros and cons, and the SDGs are by no means perfect. There's a lot of issues around them, but I think why I'm drawn to them is definitely from a creative element that they are so bright and bold, and you can get really, you can stay at that surface level of the goals, or you can get really deep and nerdy with them and look at the targets and the indicators that sit under the SDGs. And because no one owns the SDGs, they are a UN initiative, but the UN don't own them. It means there's flexibility and there's creative license to use the SDGs as to how your business or organization or school or university or nonprofit wants to take them and run with them. So I think there's that freedom that freedom and flexibility makes them really versatile. And the most important thing is they speak a global language. So, right now, more than ever, we need to be coming together in solidarity. That's what COVID-19 definitely, highlighted for us. So speaking that international language is really, really important. And that's what the SDGs are. So I find them to be a beautiful framework. And these are my 5. So my 5 are reduced inequalities, SDG 10, sustainable consumption and production, 12, sustainable cities and communities, 11, and then peace, justice, and strong institutions, 16, and of course the most important, in my opinion, is partnerships for the goals. That's 17. That's mahi tahi. So that's recognizing that we can't do this alone, and we need to all work together and collaborate to achieve the goals by the deadline, which is scheduled for 2030, and we're in the halfway mark this year, and there's a real question mark around whether we'll make it.
Yeah, and I should say one of the interesting things with having some framework is, of course, no framework is going to be perfect. There's so much intricacy in just being humans in our own lives, and then in society and the whole world. And there's so many things that, of course, are not where they need to be, at least on my point of view, and where we could be. And as well, there's a lot of times this space that I actually, a lot of times with my students at university, is like, find the space that you resonate with, because that's where you're most likely to actually engage and to do something. Because if not, everything is too much. Like, I mean, there's so much going on in the world, and it's like there's so much information that a lot of times people are like, you know, this is too much, and I cannot do anything. And if I do something, it doesn't matter. And it's like, well, let's break all of this down. And I think that is as an important piece of finding, as well, as you said, like you have those 5 that are the ones that you resonate with the most, and it doesn't mean that the other ones don't matter. It's just like, okay, that perhaps is your starting point.
That's it. And we always say when we do workshops with businesses, because it's, it's Bead and Proceed's growing now, where we do, consulting, and we do conferences and workshops. And I always say to the applicants and the audience, when you're choosing your 5, you're not rejecting the others. You're just putting your focus into, thinking, what are your strengths? What are your unique platforms? What are your resources and connections so you can make real tangible impact? Because when you impact one, you impact another. And you're so right as well, Brian, about just the overwhelm of choice and information, and just, the intense uncertainties that we're all facing right now. And we talked a bit about this yesterday, around this isn't a unique feeling for Aotearoa. This is actually a global feeling. We're currently in a massive social decision paralysis dilemma. And what that means is we've stopped backing our ability to believe that we can make impact, and we've stopped taking action when we need to take action more than ever. And I totally appreciate, like, burnout, overwhelm. It's a very real thing, but it's not helpful in the environment that we're in, when a lot of these uncertainties demand us to do something about them. So having this tool, the SDGs and sustainable development, and this framework in particular, choosing your 5, it helps to reduce that overwhelm and refine your focus, and gives you direction around, okay, I don't have to look at all of these issues, but where's the 1, where's the 3 or the 5 that I can put my attention into. And that's something I was telling you about this yesterday. This is sort of a formula that I've been working on, which is, if sustainability gives us direction, right, then I see creativity as the motor behind us, to continue that energy and continue getting excited and inspired. Because I don't mean creativity in that fluffy sense of the word of painting and getting messy and art, right? I mean, that definitely has its place, but I mean creativity more in that, like, energy sense, right? Like, what gets you creatively thinking, what gets you inspired? Like, what's that motor behind you to make that impact? And then keeping up with this metaphor, if you've got sustainability as direction, creativity is the motor, then you have to make sure that your engine is getting serviced, right? And that's the leadership component, coming back to what I mean around leading yourself. So if we're going to make any impact around people and planet, and to care about people and planet, we have to recognize we're part of that ecosystem. So we have to take care of ourselves too. We have to do that, internal work if we're going to make that external change. So that's how I sort of see creativity, leadership, and sustainability all coming together. And that's why I feel so, blessed that Bead and Proceed has helped me sort of, refine my thinking into this formula, which I'm sure will change later on, but that's where I am now, which is exciting.
That's so great. And I think that, as you are saying that, and for me, this is always the idea of taking self-responsibility, understanding, like, what's my place, and especially, and I share this a lot. I know that I'm in a position of privilege. I'm in a position of privilege for a lot of different reasons. I'm a male. I am, like, for most people, mostly white, even though I'm Latin, from South America. Like, for a lot of people that they see me, I'm educated. I have freedom of choice because I have the skills and the work that allows me to do things in a certain way. And with that, for me, comes the responsibility of understanding what am I doing with this privilege that I have, with making sure, and this as well as my approach, that I am well. This is the thing. It's as well that I see a lot of people and they are wanting to create so much change. And I'm like, wonderful. making sure that we are okay as well. Because as one of the things that, and I've talked about this with a lot of my students and with a lot of people in the climate action space, is that they get to a place of burnout, but as well, they are modeling that. What people are seeing, that these people in positions of leadership, whether that's big or just community or family, is that they are neglecting perhaps certain aspects. They are learning that as well. And for me, and I mean, the SDG that I connect with the most is health and well-being. Because for me, that is at the root of a lot of the things. Like, and this is why, at the same time, everything is so connected, because if one is actually okay in their health and their well-being, there's more possibility for actually having more space for work, for like that financial economic stability within how our system operates, to be able to care for the communities, to be able to care for the land and for the spaces, and suddenly everything starts to actually interconnect. And this is what I feel a lot of times, that we are beings that everything is connected, and we don't need to figure out everything, and we don't need to do everything. As you're saying, those 5 are the ones that perhaps you resonate with the most, and that you might say, I'm going to start there, knowing that there's someone else that is going to start somewhere else. And
totally.
all of us together are actually going to touch on everything, because we all care about different things.
Yes. Yeah, that's so well said. Exactly. I have this firm belief that, as humans, there's just this feeling within all of us that we all want to be a part of something that is bigger than us, but better because of us. And now that's not my quote. That's a quote from one of my mentors, Dr. Lane Perry, who's been a huge part of my leadership journey. And I think it's as simple as that. And you're so right, because the SDGs are all interconnected. There's like this assurance that just because you're selecting 5, there will be a knock-on effect to others, and other people have different interests and different values, and they're going to be curious about different SDGs. And if we put that trust into each other and that assurance, it not only gives us the sense of focus and permission to just sort of focus on what we can control, but it also means that we're trusting each other to all do what we can with the time and the resources that we have.
And I want to touch, Bridget, on your experience now having run these workshops. How are people finding them, in terms of like, have you noticed that a lot of people perhaps have never even heard of the SDGs, or there's a little bit of knowledge, as well as, how open are people on making the bids? Because I do know, and this is just my personal experience with a lot of people think that they are not creative, or that they cannot do that. What has been your experience with those things?
Oh, it's such a good question. Okay, it sort of sounds like a two-parter. I'll ask about, the knowledge that people have on the goals, and then I'll talk about the creativity part. So I always get everyone to do like a thumb barometer at the start of the workshop. Thumb up is like they know the goals so well, they should be delivering the workshop. Thumb down is they've never heard of them. And most of the time I see people either thumb down or halfway. And I'd like to think that the people that are putting their thumbs halfway are people who are like, yeah, I've seen 17 of them. I know what they are. But I guess the importance of the workshop is I go right back to where sustainable development started. So I go back to like 19, I just want to acknowledge as well that sustainable development, in terms of the official worldwide definition, I'm very conscious that Indigenous cultures have been practicing, sustainable development for many, many, many years. So this is just looking at it from that perspective. And we go back to 1972. which is where a conference took place in Stockholm called the Conference of the Human Environment. And that was the first conference that had all the world leaders in the same room together, recognizing that the economy on one hand and the environment on the other were on a collision course. And so that was a really important moment in time. So the workshop goes right back to then and kind of explains how we got to these 17 SDGs, and it unpacks the different targets, the 169 targets. And so it's giving people all of that detail and really helping them to understand that this is a framework that wasn't just randomly, like 17 goals weren't randomly picked back in 2015. It's been a long time in the making, and there's been iteration. So before the SDGs, there were the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, which focus on radically reducing poverty. And they were also for a commitment of 15 years. And I'm sure after the SDGs, there'll be another framework. And I think when people understand that background, it sort of grounds them and makes them realize, okay, these aren't just, fluffy colors and pretty pictures. This is a globally recognized sustainability tool that, we can use for our reporting, and most importantly, to help us, again, connect with what we truly care about at a deep level. It gives us that direction and that clarity. And I think we're missing that at the moment because there is so much noise, there's so much information, there's so much uncertainty, it's hard to know where to start. So I'd like to think that we're definitely not where we need to be in terms of engagement. And the reason for that is probably a few. One could be political. So even though Aotearoa, New Zealand, adopted the SDGs back in September 2015, we've actually gone with other frameworks that are more tailored to us as a country. So there's the Living Standards Framework and the Four Wellbeings Framework. And they are great, but they don't have that global connection that I think we need. And anyway, I could go on about that, but we definitely need to be doing more engagement. So there was a report that came out by the Auditor General on the government's preparedness to implement the SDGs back in, I want to say in 2020, July last year. I think it was last year, or it could have been the year before. And basically it highlighted that we need to do way more engagement. So that's where I see Bead and Proceed being a tool to help people with that engagement, from schools to corporates and everything in between. We really want people to connect with the goals and, and raise the awareness, and then turn that awareness into action. And that's where that creativity part comes into it. And so you asked that question, like, what's the appetite around the creative element? And I'll be honest, it's, I would say like 90%, it's like, awesome, this is so cool. We're going to be doing something a bit different. We're going to be getting out of our comfort zones. We're going to be getting into a situation where we're going to be mixing paint together with each other. And there's a whole symbolism behind all of that, right? Like sharing resources, sharing paint, oh, you've got a great SDG 12. Do you mind if I borrow some? And it sort of breaks down those barriers. Like making this a creative exercise is very intentional. There's a lot of studies that show how creativity get us into a state of flow. It's a great tool for distraction therapy, which makes the workshop space a really safe environment where people feel like they can open up and talk to their colleagues about why they've chosen their 5 goals, because naturally, it can lead to some really vulnerable and personal stories about, why these are the 5, big challenges of the world that you care about. But there is always a small percentage of people that are quite uncomfortable. But I like to say that at the start they're uncomfortable, and then by the end of it they're like fully convinced, and they realize that it's not about the beads. So there might be like for example, when we do our workshops, we have a tablecloth and all the mixing plates, and there'll always be a few people that are like, oh, it looks like my kid's 6-year-old birthday party. Like, they'll make a comment to sort of like, because they're feeling, I don't know, a bit embarrassed. But I always go like, oh, funny. And, well, we'll see what we're going to do. I sort of kind of want to like not make them feel uncomfortable, but sort of like lean into the surprise and the unexpectedness of like what's going to show up for this workshop. And then by the end of it, they realize it's actually not about the beads. The beads are simply a tool to extract that conversation and discussion. And of course, it's a takeaway. It's a physical reminder of your commitment, and it serves as a conversation starter to help spread that engagement, which, as I mentioned, is really important.
Yeah, and as well, I know from my experience, when as a facilitator, you need to understand that there's going to be people, especially if if they didn't choose to go there, like if their workplace in like inviting them to go, it's like, okay, yeah, there's going to be some people with some resistance, and it's about leaning into it as well as understanding, like, yes, there's going to be people that might find this uncomfortable, and it's such a wonderful tool. Any space that can be created, especially at workplaces, because when I work at workplaces, they are so used to engaging one way, usually with their coworkers, and it's all about work, and it's all about a need and an ask, and sometimes, depending on the workplace specific, and depending on the roles, and depending on the people, perhaps they haven't connected, and this can be such a wonderful team building exercise to be there, and as you're saying, to understand, like, perhaps someone is choosing the SDG around like justice or poverty because that's their background or their family, like, experience something like that, and perhaps that could help connect them as a team and make it so much stronger to be able to understand, okay, like, now I understand this person much more.
Totally. And so our workshops, Bead and Proceed, is definitely used as a like sustainable strategy information tool, but it's also very much a team building exercise, because people recognize that this is something that can break barriers and connect people in a fun way. And you're absolutely right around, like, now it's so weird, because when you think about when we were younger, we always had access to that real creative, raw, messy creativity. It was so important for increasing our emotional intelligence, our problem-solving ability, and those are all things that we actually still need to continue to like practice and develop. And then somewhere along the way, society is just like, nope, put the paintbrush down. That's child's play. Problems are to be solved behind a desk, in a cubicle, in front of a screen. And I think with and I'm not anti-technology. We're using it right now. I'm a big fan of tech, but I do think with these new tools like AI and ChatGPT, I'm real curious as to see how is that going to affect our creative thinking, because there's been some studies and some suggestions that it's going to create the homogenization of ideas. We're going to sort of go, don't need to think. Don't need to really think about that because I can just chat GPT it. And also, what were they saying? There was something about that attitude could affect our ability around the perseverance of challenges, which is not what we need when we're facing massive challenges today. But I also want to recognize that people have different creative processes. And so that's something that I've kind of developed and gone deeper with through doing these workshops. So I like to say that there are 4 different creative process archetypes. So there's like the analyst, the disruptor, the spirited, and the philosopher. So if you are like a spirited creative archetype, you're going to be someone that connects really well to the use of play, getting out of your comfort zone. You appreciate that, to learn and to have ideas stick and to ideate. You want to engage with other people, and you want to get active and that sort of that tactile learning. Whereas like if you look at someone like the analyst, they appreciate the numbers, the formulas. Their creative style is going to require reflective time alone to process information, and maybe engage with a few other people once their ideas are more refined. So I've developed a quiz because I got really into this around what is your creative process archetype. And it's just a tool. Again, I don't want to put people in boxes. That's something that I wanted to get out of when I was younger, but it's just something to get you thinking about, what is what is my creative process? Because it's going to be unique to everyone. But what I have found is if you really want to boost your creativity, because for some people it's connecting with others, so it's an engagement piece. For other people, it can be that, you want an active booster. So it's like going for a walk, changing up how you get to work every day. Movement's really powerful. Or there's that reflective time, like I said, journaling and processing information. And that's also why like meditation's really important too. It comes also back, it can help with boosting your creativity. But what I have found is one of the biggest boosters is nature. Nature is inherently a creative process, and being in nature is so important for boosting our creativity. And again, it re-emphasizes the need to protect her, which is, again, why it all sort of has this like circle of sustainability, creativity, and leadership sort of coming back together again.
Yeah, I mean, with stuff like that, there's so much synergy, and I, one of the things that you were just talking about, like the society that we live in, that is like, okay, you're a kid and then you become an adult at some point. It's like, well, like I want to be a kid still, in terms of that, in terms of being able to play or to be creative or messy or whatever, even if I'm not, like painting or doing art, as you were saying, like creativity doesn't have to be just about that. And it's like we've been taught out of that because of the way that our mainstream education system works. And it's like, okay, like we need to come back more to it. And I want to explore a little bit more as well, because one of the things that I have found as well, you talk about there's so many different frameworks. One of the things that a lot of times for me is so important, and this is why I love what you were sharing about there's the why or the what, which is the sustainable like development goals, and then you have the creativity, and then you have the leadership, and this is why we're called conscious action. Like actually taking action and finding the framework that works for you, like, and that allows you to make something and allows you to start taking a step, take an action, and whether that's a huge one or a small one. And this is, like, I find a lot of the frameworks that are out there that are so, in a sense, they're not so tangible, and it's hard. Going back to that paralysis that a lot of people feel, or the overwhelm, is like, well, there's too much going on there. And then there's some things like, like Project Drawdown, which is wonderful for everything that has to do with sustainability. It's like, these are all of the things that you can do, or that we can do as a society, or like this framework is finding those things that I can take an action. And it's something so important, because if not, it just stops the momentum and just creates that atrophy. And I love what you were saying about technology. Like, I know for myself, I had the other time, like some weeks ago, that someone asked me, I didn't have my phone, and someone asked me a phone number, and I'm like, I have no idea. When I was a kid, I knew all of the phone numbers. Like, I mean, there wasn't any cell phones. So like I knew, like, by like just, like completely memorized all of my family and my friends' houses numbers. Now I don't know anyone's number except mine, which is easy. And there's as well with that, of course, there's like the positive is like, well, I don't need to create space in my mind for that. So now it could be like freed up for something else. But as well, if I'm not using, because I'm relying all of the time on technology or on something else, I might be losing how to get there. Because this came about because someone picked me up, and we were going to an event, and it was such an easy thing, and I've been with that person, like with my friend, for so many times to that place, and they still had to take out Google Maps to drive there. And I'm like, oh, and he was, I've never actually looked where I'm going. I've always followed Google Maps. And I'm like, fair enough. It's not about judging that. It's about understanding how are we operating.
Totally. Yeah. That's I totally can relate around that number thing. It's actually so embarrassing because, yeah, there were all these like phone numbers I remember as a kid, you know, growing up, and you just like, you knew your best friends, you knew your neighbors. I've been with I got married this year to my husband. I've been with him for 12 years, and he's going to be like, I can't believe you told people, but I still don't know his number off by heart. Like, it is so embarrassing when I'm in the supermarket and I go to like get his number out because they're asking for like, you know, the coupon, and it's under his name. I'm like, sorry, let me just get my husband's phone number because I don't remember it. Sometimes on a good day it will be in my brain, but you're absolutely right around this like reliance, and again I want to just stress, like, I'm a big fan of technology, and I do feel like technology is going to be a huge part in, you know, and doing what we can to make sustainable change. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be putting in the effort as well. And I like to use the example of, if you think about the invention of the car, right? When the invention of the car happened, it removed the need for us to, you know, to run or to walk, because it could get us from A to B. But we still go for runs, we still go for long hikes, because we appreciate that it's good for us. We intentionally make time for that type of exercise, even though the car technically took away the need for us to do that. And I think that's the same thing that we're going to have to look at creativity with balancing it with technology. While technology can definitely help us and remove some of the brain power we need, because it's there as a tool, and it's a great tool as well, we are just going to have to consciously make the time for creativity and put it back into our lives, because we recognize that there are health benefits, and there's a real connection there around it bettering our well-being. So that's the analogy I like to use. I think we're just going to have to carve it out and be more intentional around making time for it.
Yeah. And, you know, like, as well, I love technology. And I actually think that technology, if we use it wisely, is going to be the one that solves a lot of the issues. Because if we actually have technology that can do, and robots that can do a lot of tasks that are things super easy, that now there's humans doing and being paid either minimum wage or even lower than that, and that will free up more space and more time and more capacity. But it needs to be like a whole global thing, and I don't want to get into that rabbit hole of the universal basic income and all of those things that sometimes the technology could aid for us to get there. But I'm more curious on keeping this conversation with you here. I want to ask you, or for you to share with everyone, what are the types of, you shared a little bit, but what are the types of work that you're doing? What are the type of workshops? Who are the people that can engage with you? Is it just people here in Aotearoa? Is it people around the world? Just tell me about that.
I guess you'd say like our bread and butter workshop is called Bead and Proceed Epic. So that is about a 2 to 3 hour fully facilitated workshop where we go into a business or an organization, and we deep dive and demystify the SDG framework. As I said, we go right back to the history of sustainable development, and then the team or the organization breaks out into smaller groups for each person to make and paint their 5 beads. And the really beautiful thing with that, with Bead and Proceed Epic, is we take all of that data and we collate it into a report that's unique for that business, that stresses the SDG strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. And because the SDGs highlight, areas that staff and people are passionate about, it's a really great tool and information data gathering system done in a really clever and safe way, because people are able to subtly share, where they want the organization and business to make impact, or where they think they should be focusing on areas around, social issues like inclusion and diversity, gender equality. And so I think like that in itself is a really rich tool. So Bead and Proceed epic is the workshops that we run. But we also have a beautiful experience called Bead and Proceed Impact, which is for our larger scale events, and similar structure, but instead of everyone coming with a takeaway necklace or keyring, we weave the beads into a beautiful beaded mural. So everyone might paint one bead in the goal they want to action, and then we weave them into this artwork in real time so you can see the mural come to life. And of course, that is not only visual data because you can physically see what people have selected, but it also serves as a symbol of weaving together our collective actions to make change. And the artwork is this really beautiful, piece that people can put in their staff room or reception area to remind themselves of the impact they made. But of course, even though those are sort of like the two, I guess you'd call them like packages, which sounds like very commercialized. What we do is, it's very fluid. We're not prescribed to anything. We can curate and something bespoke. But something that I am really, really excited about, which we sort of touched on around those three areas of sustainability, creativity, and leadership, is I've just introduced a new program called the Proceed program, which is all about stepping up in those three areas. And it's open for anyone, whether you are a business leader, you're just starting an organization, you're a curious student that, is on the cusp of change, or you're in middle management. We are doing a 3-month online program where we're catching up once a week virtually. And we're kicking off the program with an in-person retreat in Otatahi, Christchurch on the 28th of July. There are a few spaces open, but it's really exciting to have this program because I think for a long time I had sort of been pigeonholed as bead girl, and there's nothing wrong with bead girl. Like I'm happy to wear the title, but what I've learned with Bead and Proceed is it's so much more than the beads, and I don't want the beads to be a distraction. It's that message of leadership, creativity, and sustainability that we're really wanting to share. And we run our workshops with everyone. I mean, we do a lot with corporates, a lot of engineering firms, private service firms, consultants, anyone really. But we also do it with councils, which is really exciting because they're starting to weave the SDGs and their long-term plans and strategies, which is so fantastic. And then, and organizations and schools and universities. So, and the other thing I just want to stress as well is I made a comment before about the materials we use. Because we want Bead and Proceed to be accessible to everyone and anyone. And that's actually one of the big, a key point with the Agenda 2030, which is to leave no one behind. So every Bead and Proceed kit purchase, another is donated to either a low decile school or a deserving community organisation. So if you are one of those, get in touch because we have some kits we can donate. And then we also have all of our materials are supplied by an incredible organization called Silence, located in Calcutta, India. And they employ artists who have hearing, speaking, and physical disabilities, giving them quality and safe employment. And they're World Fair Trade certified. And all of the kits are made from recycled paper, and the beads are made from recycled wooden pallets. And then the paint we use is from the Natural Paint Company. So for every square meter of paint painted, they save a square meter of Amazon rainforest. So we try and make the supply chain and all materials aligned to the SDGs as well, where we can.
Yeah, and I always feel like, of course, there's no such a thing as perfection at the moment. Yet, when we are, especially when we are, social enterprises, and we are sharing something, walking that talk is so important. And and to be able, as you're saying, and this is something that, thank you for sharing, because for people that are listening, there's that as well, the knowing that they are sourcing everything from the at least on what's possible, ethical, sustainable practices, and making sure that there's people on the other side that are actually benefiting, and there's all of these other aspects, that it's not just this one thing of we're painting, and we didn't even think about where all of this comes from. So yeah, like thank you for sharing that. As we are getting towards the end of this conversation, just to honor your time as well, this might be related or not, or perhaps you have already shared it. I always ask, or not always, often ask, what is the one thing that you wish everyone in the world knew?
Oh my gosh, Brian, that's such a hard question.
It could be a couple.
Oh my gosh, my mind was like racing about all these ideas, like what like information and stuff. But it's funny, as soon as you said like, what is the one thing you wish everybody knew? And then like my heart went straight to like, you are valued. I don't know. I just feel like I think that's the most. I think if we start there, then I feel like nothing else really matters if you don't. If you feel like if you don't value yourself and you yourself don't feel valued, then I don't think you're going to have the energy or the love or the support around you to make any change or to simply exist if you don't feel like you're valued. So I just want everyone to know that you are valued.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And definitely, I believe the same. And it all starts from within. And when we don't have that capacity to feel valued, to feel loved, to feel that we are part of something or that we belong, it's hard to do a lot of things. So thank you for sharing that. For everyone listening, go and check out the Bead and Proceed website. We'll have all of the links on the show notes so that it's easy access. If you resonated with what Bridget has been sharing, if you want to perhaps have your business or your organization take part of it, go and talk and just reach out. I'm sure that it will be great. And as Bridget, you've been saying, like, for creativity, for team bonding, for learning about sustainability, for taking something that is cool as well to wear. So thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing with us.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Thank you for holding the space for us to share our mahi. And please let me know what I can do to help spread yours as well, because it's such a blessing to actually have these conversations and reflect. And just remember that sometimes it helps sort of formulate and recognize where I've come from as well. So I have huge thanks to you.
Thank you. And thank you once again, everyone, for listening to us. And we'll see you all on the next episode. Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.